progressive companies that I know on this planet. But is it radical enough? And I don't think it is. Now, I've always reflected the company as to my behavior. It's always been my alter ego. And let me tell you, as I'm getting older, I'm getting more radical. And the company, you know, shaped by the CEO, the new CEO, shaped by the board, a little bit more timid, you know, and maybe not timid by other company standards, but a little bit timid from my standards. So it's fine, but it's, you know, not as brave as I would like it to be. And this isn't on products, this isn't on business analysis, this is on the issues. We are a company who's dedicated our entire being to social and environmental change. This is our legal entity and in our articles of association and memoranda, and for the advocacy of human rights work. So, you know, to have to take 60% or 70% of all our investors to come together and vote that out. So we're pretty brave anyway. But we're not brave enough for me. There is sacred territory in businesses, things that you never do. And what you never do is challenge another company. Really, this is not de rigueur at all. And I don't know where this notion of protection of other companies' behavior, that it's not on my patch, not on my ground, you can't make any comments. We've never followed that. Body Shop, as under my tutelage, has always championed the causes and actually pointed the fingers at other companies. And the two that we have been particularly strong and open about, oh, it's like David and Goliath. One was Shell. For 5 years, we were campaigning against Shell and their business practices in Nigeria with effect on the Ogoni people. I mean, really, and it was not just campaigning, opening up the shops and corralling, writing letters to the media. It was dialoguing, going behind the scenes and talking to the CEO of Shell. And I so passionately believe in dialoguing. So this notion of confrontation, which is very sexy in the media, but which actually doesn't work. Many cases, you just have to find more the Socratean dialogue. You got it. That's my belief. So Shell, because of its business practices in Nigeria, and especially, I think, its support with the judicious execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa, and very recently with Esso in England, a sort of subsidiary of ExxonMobil. And the reason why is because they are probably, in fact, the only corporation, one of the biggest, most powerful corporations on this planet, that absolutely says there is no connection between fossil fuel and global warming. And more so than that, they're the one company that puts so much money into Bush's campaign finances. And also, in a disingenuous, dishonest way, create these phony think tanks that say there is no connection, the so-called intellectual academic think tanks, which have no credence whatsoever. So that's the reason why. And the collection of corporate crimes that ExxonMobil has within its history is legend. The dilemma was that nobody wants to print them except some amazing, brave journalist in Sydney, in the Sydney Morning Herald, that will print this up. The rest are just, no media wants to touch it. So that's the reason why.
Is there anything that will compel ExxonMobil to become more like Body Shop?
I don't think any company will become more like Body Shop, because it's I mean, we act like a non-for-profit organization, and we act more like a, we act more like a, NGO in many ways. I think what will change them will not be the greenwashing from the press, from the PR agencies and the wonderful ads they can do. It's about the consumer revolt. A Shell official said to me in the protest in Seattle, he said to me, we don't fear regulations anymore. We control all regulations. What we fear is consumer revolt. And customers are now saying, not only do we want to feel sympathy with a product, we want to feel sympathy with a company who makes a product. So the behavior of a company is now what's singly being looked at. So direct action specialists, people who are, who just ethical watchdogs, are pointing their finger, I think, rightfully at the actions of business, and will be using business as a target for protest now.
Do you think, as you said, you've gone after Shell. Now, the public persona of Exxon and Shell are quite different. Shell actually portrays itself as part of the social responsibility movement, and Exxon generally doesn't. As two big oil corporations, is there a qualitative difference between them, or do you feel that Shell's social responsibility image is just a marketing tool? Because they're on into, I mean, they've moved on from Nigeria, as I understand, to Peru and the Amazon basin.
It's really hard. You know, people say, well, what do I choose? You know, who do I choose to fill up my tank? At the moment, you know, for me, ExxonMobil, because they're the only oil company that doesn't make that connection between fossil fuels and climate change. You know, I just think, well, at least the others are saying, yes, there is a major connection, and we have to look for more creative ways of providing energy that maybe has to be sustainable or green energy. Every one of these oil companies has an army, I'm hearing, and that would be well to check to protect their interests. So the greatest increase in services now are small-scale armies. So in Nigeria, I've just recently come back. I'm still seeing hospitals where there's no anesthetic, women still having cesareans without any anesthetic. I'm seeing schools that haven't been built, thousands of billions of dollars extracted from the oil, owned by the Ogoni. I'm not seeing one penny going back into the Ogoni community. I just want to make my choices, and the least horrendous oil company for me, a Venezuelan one. So trying to find a Venezuelan oil company is not easy, but it's there. You know, when I look at these pharmaceutical industries and this oil industry, they have such a chance. They have such a chance of being so brilliant. You know, the money that they make could still go into really great research into alternative energy, green energy, solar energy, wind energy, wave energy. It's so visionary for them to have done that. They so can clear up their own mess. They so can give back to the community. It's all about this need to maximize profits. And that's the nub. If you can just not maximize it and just make profits that are, you know, healthy and give back, then you wouldn't have this vicious differential between the poor and the rich. You wouldn't have this revolting behavior that makes people revolt against you. You wouldn't have this terrorism, this exacerbation of poverty. And that's the bit that they don't get. The question is, how do you change? How do you get the system changed? How do you get people who've been brought up to believe that business way of life has to follow what they've been told has to follow? And usually, as I said, through the business school, there's only one way you can change that. You're either forced to change by public outrage, or the second is by experiences. Your values change when your experiences change. Experiences change your values. If you could take 2 or 3 good men and true to visit what you have seen, the children dying in the toxic waste dumps, the children born with no genitalia because of the pesticides in the tobacco fields. If you could show them that, if you could show the financial institutions that, because CEOs actually are employed and they could be fired. So it's not the changing of a CEO, it's the system that has to be changed. And until you get this change that money matters beyond everything else, and our only cultural value in our society now is economics, till that gets changed, I think you'll have a hard time changing.